Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for The Last of Us Season 2. To get right into it, didn't like it as much. Just to clear that one right off the top, like a lot of people, admittedly, I don't think this one worked as well as the first season. And I already have my issues with Season 1, and you can watch my reviews for that. But it was kind of similar to Season 2, except Season 1, it was like, okay, they changed this, but it mostly had to do with the fact that they kind of took a bunch of stuff out. It was like, okay, they got, this thing or this monster or this set of monsters, like clickers here, bloater here, like all of that stuff, shrunken down or kind of combined and put into like one little piece here or there. And it was like, okay, I don't like it as much. I wish we had, more of that, because some of those elements aren't just like, oh, it's gameplay. Some of that stuff actually helps you, specifically like the David sequence from the first game. I was like, oh, it really sucks that they didn't bother spending the money to have them actually get attacked by the infected, because that's not just a gameplay segment. It's like, oh, I don't know who this random dude is, and then we like fight and survive together, and it's like, whoa, that was crazy. It's like, okay, like I think you're kind of cool. And then it goes into, yeah, actually you killed some of my people, now I gotta take you. And granted, they switched that around, and also they kind of gave away the spoiler that they were bad guys anyway, and I didn't really like that either, because I was like, that's like the twist of the first game. So I definitely didn't like that in Season 1. And then Season 2 comes along, and it's like, okay, they were already talking like, yeah, we're gonna split it up 3 seasons. Now they're saying 4 potentially, which I think is, personally, I think is kind of a horrible idea. And it also doesn't make any sense, which is why I think it's so horrible, because I'm like, you went through, I think it was 8 episodes, if I'm not mistaken, for Season 2, and you spent 3 episodes in Jackson. They did not have to do that. Like, we probably spent more time in Jackson in the 3 episodes we got than we actually do in the real game. Like, by the time you get to the point of like, oh, Joel is dead and stuff like that, instantaneous. Like, they leave like the very next day. They don't do the thing where it's like, oh, you got injured and then it was a month, or like 3 months or whatever to heal. It was like, no, it's instantaneous. And of course, some of that swapping things around is how the stuff they do with Dina, where it's like, oh, she ended up talking with Jesse again, and then that's when she got pregnant. It wasn't that she was pregnant and they didn't know beforehand. And timeline wise, they mix some stuff around. And at first it was like, okay, especially when the season first kicked off, I was like, all right, I wasn't even that interested in watching, solely based on the fact that I knew the season was going to split. I was like, I don't know if I even really want to watch the show, knowing and assuming, if I'm being totally honest, I was like, it's going to split exactly where the game does, because that's the best place to do it. It's like you end at the end of Ellie's first chunk of story before you get to anything with Abby. And of course that's what they do, but at the very least they tease it. They don't just cut it there, which would have been really insane. But they go in and it's like, hey, Seattle, day 1, from the other person's perspective, boom, here you go. What, 2 years they said until the next season? So we'll see about that. But all the stuff that they switched around, I won't say all the stuff, some of the stuff they switched around I thought was great. Admittedly, Joel's death I actually enjoyed more in the show than I did in the game, and it's mostly due to the fact that it was just told in the way that you can't really do it in the game, or at least not the way that they do it. There are tons of games where they'll show you what's happening with other characters that aren't you, but they don't really do that in The Last of Us. It's like whoever you're playing as, that's where the story is. They don't jump around like they do in the show. And that was something even from the first season, where it was like, oh, you get to see what other characters are doing when they reference this thing or they're doing this other thing. It's like you see those characters, because in the game you don't get to. You hear about it, but whoever you're playing as, that's all you see. You see their world going forward, and that's all there is to it. So that was another element that we got to see that I think did work fairly well, first season as well as this season, because in episode 2, that's when we have the giant swarm. They attack the city. None of that, of course, is in the game, but it was fantastic to see. We had the greatest display of chip damage I've ever seen in live action, with them hitting the bloater with the flamethrower, and it was the chip damage at the end, and then it killed him. And I was like, wow, it's never been done. It's never been done that well, but it was really good. And after that, it was like, okay, I watched, because I figured he wouldn't die. I was like, I waited until episode 2, and that's when I watched it. I was like, I'm sure this is where he dies, and it was. And it was like, all right, let's see what happens after. Then we get an entire episode where they're still in Jackson, kind of building things up, and then they leave at the end of the 3rd episode. And it's like, they don't need 4 seasons for this. If they can do all of that and go through all of Ellie's story, they can do all of that again for Abby's story. 100% with all the stuff they cut out, because especially if we go with the finale, they use the sequence where Abby meets Lev and Yara. They use that scene already, just to have it, be like a cool reference sequence and show, they did a lot of work in like the last episode. I honestly feel like they probably should have done this in previous episodes to be like, hey, you're already showing some of these characters, and they made teases of it, but they like front loaded it in the finale where it was like, hey, they're going off to war, they're going on these boats, here's this island. And that's where, you know, they throw the sequence in. It's like, I would have rather you just not put the sequence in, because, and a lot of people have said this, it's one thing when she gets hit on the boat, because they, you know, do the same thing in the game, and then she just washes up on the shore, and it's like she's at the actual aquarium in the game. Like, she's close by, one big wave hits, and then she kind of swims, and then, you know, she's on shore at the aquarium. And in this, they did it where giant wave hits, she ends up on the Scar Island, where you know that something's going on, because like I said, they put like a boatload of references compared to the other episodes, which have enough. Personally, I felt like they had enough. People are gonna, I mean, honestly, regardless of what you do or don't show, you hit us with 2 years later, no one's gonna remember anyway. Let's be honest. Like, you gotta watch the recap to be like, remember what happened in all of last season? It literally doesn't matter if they didn't show any of that, because no one's gonna remember anyway. Like, except for people that like actually really play the game. But most people, when they watch shows, it's like, you remember like bits and pieces, and then it's like, oh, I forgot about this, this, and this. And then they'd have to recap it anyway, which they're still going to recap it. And I was like, I don't think they needed to show so much extra stuff with the Scars and kind of them talking about the war in the finale. And I felt like that was a little odd, especially the sequence of her washing up on the shore, and then them, you know, at least showing the sequence where she gets captured and stuff. And then it's like, all right, we'll drop her in, you know, the horn and stuff, which once again, I don't remember if the guy that was hanging her up, I don't think he had a weapon on her. So that's why they left. But I'm like, you know, they just took off and, you know, they let her go. And it's like, real fast. I'm just saying, you could have just right in the noggin and you're done. So, you know, they took off, and then she got back on the boat, which was the same boat. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that was the boat that she was on. And then she gets on the boat again and then goes to the aquarium. I was like, that feels odd. That felt weird to have it be that way. And I was like, it could have worked easy. Like in the game, I'm pretty sure, because, you know, of course, the story is told in the same way where it's all Ellie, which I was curious going into this season. Are they going to change it where they show, you know, day one, day 2, day 2, and go back and forth? Which I, to this day, as much as I love the second game, and, you know, there's all the 100 million other random issues that other people hate on the game about, for me personally, I always thought the pacing was the issue. All you have to do, and not even show flashbacks earlier and stuff like that, if they just went back and forth, where it's like, here's Ellie, here's Abby, and, you know, you go back and forth, day 1, day 2, day 2, I think that could have worked 100%. I think it would have worked better, honestly, because especially because some of those things that happen in the game, I'll get into spoilers on that. I guess I'll wait. I'll talk more about the show in case you're watching this and you haven't played the game. I'll do full game spoilers a little down the line. But with some of the stuff they do, it's like, oh, I know the timeline for when this takes place. Obviously, they show day 1, you know, at the very end of this thing. But there are moments where the characters, they don't necessarily cross paths, but it's only like, I mean, it's the same day. But they go to locations that are very similar or the exact same spot. And it's like, you're only like 12 hours apart, if that, honestly, in certain cases, they're like right there. So I've always felt like that should have been how the game was played. I think it just would have been better for the pacing, especially because I can tell you, I don't know how people feel that never played the game, but the ending, which, you know, kind of what we got for the finale, when that showed up in the game, I hated it. Because I was so hyped to be like, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen? You know, like Jesse gets killed. You know, they don't do it in this, which I thought was super weird. That was another odd thing that they didn't do, because I thought that would have been just another crazy moment to show, you know, at the end of the finale. But it's like, in that moment in the game, and here's a slight thing, which I don't think they're gonna do it, but you get a little bit more. I'll put it that way. Like, there's a little bit extra that they skip over during that, and I was like, that's actually like a huge chunk of like just a holy crap moment, especially considering the switch between characters. There's more that happens that they actually cut out in the show. And then there's something weird that they added, and everyone's been making fun of it, you know, at least on Twitter, but people were making fun of like the editing with Ellie screaming like, no, no, no. And the thing I thought that was dumb was they're gonna have to explain that away, because they're gonna be like, well, who did she shoot? She didn't shoot Dina, she was passed out. We already saw who she shot. As far as Jesse, it's like, she's pointing the gun this way, she's not pointing down, so she didn't shoot Tommy. And we know that she's not just gonna, there's no way they're just gonna kill Ellie off. And so it's like, that's weird that they did that, because in the game, she just holds the gun out and she says the line, which I love the line, it's like, we let you live, and you wasted it. And then they build it up and she starts breathing heavy, and then it cuts to black. And I was just thinking, that's literally all you had to do for the show. Why did they throw in the gunshot? Because unless they're gonna I feel like they're gonna do that classic TV thing where they throw the gunshot in there, but in reality, when we watch the sequence, she won't even have pulled the trigger or something stupid like that, or she'll have shot after they had more conversation. And I hate when TV shows do that. It's like, well, just don't have them shoot the gun as like a fake level of suspense. It's like, she's already pointing the gun and she just blew someone's brains out instantaneously. She has Tommy bent over, like she could just kill him right there. She's pointing the gun at Ellie. I don't need a fake gunshot to go off as you cut to black. You're already pointing the gun after having killed someone. You don't need the extra fake gunshot. It was super weird that they did that, and I have no idea why. Because I'm like, you literally have it perfectly from the game. Just have her stand there as she's holding it, breathe heavy, cut to black. You don't need the fake gunshot because she didn't kill Ellie. So I just don't understand. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know why they did that when they could have just cut to black in general, but that's what they did. And it's super odd because if you go to the flashback episode, they were doing stuff like 1-to-1, like, hey, here's this, and this. I knew that there's one specific thing that happens. For those of you who haven't played the game, it's not a spoiler, but in the game, when she climbs the dinosaur, you can actually jump off the dinosaur because it's got like a little pool. I knew that we weren't going to do that, but I wanted to reference that can happen in the game if you actually do that. And you don't have to do that. I've seen people play, they didn't know you could climb the dinosaur. You just have to do it manually. It doesn't tell you to do that. You can just skip right over that section. But I thought that was super cool. And I knew that, like I said, I knew they wouldn't do the jump in the pool, which doesn't even make sense in the game. I'm like, it's not going to be that deep, but that's how they made it. And I was like, okay, it was I'm like, it wouldn't, that doesn't even, like, a bomb would have to have gone off for that to just randomly be that deep. Right underneath the statue, it would have been flat ground. But once again, it's an apocalypse, some bombs went off, whatever. She was able to jump off the dinosaur and like splash into like it wouldn't be a puddle, she'd be dead. But that's what it should have been, because I'm like, that doesn't really make any sense. But okay, got to climb a dinosaur, that was cool. We got to see the stuff with the astronaut and everything, and they even do the sequence where she's imagining, going to space by listening to the audio. Great sequence. Loved how they did the flashback where they were like, here you go, all flashbacks, all Ellie, all Joel. And they go through, and we even get extra stuff that's not in the game. We get the sequence of Joel catching her with her ex-girlfriend. So that's not something you actually see in the game. Joel's flashback of him as a, I guess, teenager or young adult. We do not get that in the game. We don't get a young Tommy and young Joel. So that's something that's brand new for the game. And then of course, there's Eugene. And this was like the big mystery thing where it's like, all right, well, what happened? Why didn't he kill this dude? And how was it that he killed him in like this really horrible way? Like, what is it that he did that was so effed up? And they reference it early on with the therapist when I think it was her birthday. It was like, it's my first birthday without my husband, and she's like, I hate you for the way that you killed him and you didn't let him see me and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, what is it that could have stopped him from letting this guy have his final words or whatever? And then we finally get the episode as a part of one of the flashbacks, and this is definitely one of the major changes that I do not like for the show. I don't mind that they did the flashback where, they have this sequence and how he did it, and he was a douchebag for killing the guy early and stuff. And, that could be up. I've seen people say like he was right for not doing that, or he was right for, killing the guy, and that's protocol. He was wrong for lying to her, but he was right for still killing the guy. I thought he was wrong because I'm like, they know how long it takes. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm just like, well, how long it does take. He was like just bitten. That it takes a certain amount of hours. Like at that point, they, there's charts from the first season where they literally show like, if you get bit here, or here, here's how many hours you have. And they don't explain it exactly how far they have to go. But I would assume if Ellie is smart enough to know, hey, we can at least get him back, then they could have gotten him back. So in my opinion, I'm like, it was kind of a dick move on both parts, where I was like, he didn't have to lie to her, which is obviously what screwed things up in the end between the two of them. And he also didn't have to kill the dude because they could have just gone back. Now, in my opinion, a lot of people said like, you can't just bring the guy in the village. I'm like, why would you go in the village? Just bring him to the door. Hey, here's what's happening. You want final words and stuff. I wouldn't mind it, especially, with the way it ended up for the therapist. Is like, I think she would have definitely preferred to, she wouldn't have watched him get his brains blown out, but it's like, with the way it was done, I'm pretty sure she would have preferred, final rights or whatever. So I thought that was interesting in the way they did it. And it was like, that was the thing that helped Ellie realize, like, the way that he promised her that he wasn't going to kill him. And then of course he does. And that's what made her officially realize he definitely lied about everything that happened at Salt Lake. And, they show her questioning it before he says like, it's your birthday, so we can do your first patrol. She has the questions and she's ready to ask him anyway. Cause it's like, how does this make any sense? If there's raiders, how do we escape? And all these other things. And I don't mind the addition of the sequence of him making that choice, and it adds extra ambiguity in certain aspects, and being like, well, I think he could have done this, or he shouldn't have done it this way, or however you want to look at it, giving that nuance of good and bad in the things that Joel does. For me though, as someone who played the game, and this is a minor spoiler because at this point it's just how she finds out officially, they just go back to Salt Lake. It's way better in the game. My personal opinion, it's like a million times cooler because they're off doing some mission and they're close enough to Salt Lake that Ellie just takes off. And then she goes back to the hospital after it's been abandoned, and she just runs around and she finds some stuff. And I think it was like a recording, if I'm not mistaken. She hears like a straight up recording where they talk about what happened and how devastated they are, because it's like, we don't know if we'll ever have this opportunity again and stuff like that. It's very clear that was like the only person they'd ever known to be immune, and Joel lied. And having it come like straight from the source, literally going back to the actual hospital, was a million times cooler than them just having it where she's like, the way you looked when you lied to me is what made me realize that you lied this whole time. And I already had questions, but that's what solidified it for me, and that's what made her hate him. And I'm like, it was just better in the game where you just have it where she just straight up goes there. She just goes to the location and figures out the answer, and that's how it happens. And that also changes some things, because when they have the conversation on the porch, some of the dialogue that she mentions there, when she specifically says like, don't lie to me, or, we're done. She says that at Salt Lake, and it's like, hey, if you lie to me now, you will never see me again. They're already not in Jackson. She's like, I'll just go somewhere. I'll just take off and you'll never see me. I'll go back with you if you tell the truth, but we're still done. But I'll at least go back and, I'll be around you at the very least. So that's how they do it in the game. And I just thought it was way better. And I was like, it kind of sucks. Like even with what they did, there's another segment earlier in the game where she kind of questions things because of something else that happens, which if you play the game, which I recommend, you'll experience that. And I was like, even that scene would have been a better way to actually do it than just, oh, the way you looked when you lied is how I figured out you lied. And I'm like, I just felt like it was more intense in the game, even during the sequence where she doesn't say it. If they combine that with her, kind of confronting him, even that would have been better, but 100%, they should have, like, it's one of those things, just like with the David stuff, where I'm like, it was a crucial part of the game, which, like I said at the time, that would have been a twist that he was a villain. In the show, they just do it from like the episode starts and it's like, oh, this is like a crazy religious cult where he's like slapping kids and stuff like that. But in the game, it was like, oh, I felt weird that they wouldn't spend the money to have that sequence, or spend that money in the show to have that sequence play out where they team up, Ellie and David from the first season. And it was the same thing for this, where I was like, that seems like it's worth the money to have her just go back to the location and experience it 100%. Like, this is where it happened, and she goes there and that's where she finds the answers. I'm like, that's just better to me, personally speaking. But I didn't hate how they, killed Joel off. Switching Manny, or not Manny, switching, what the F is his brother? Tommy. Jesus, I couldn't remember. Switching Tommy and Dina. And I was like, okay, I appreciated that change. I thought it was pretty cool. And then it allowed, Tommy to actually have a really epic moment. And I even didn't mind the fact that Tommy didn't leave until later, because in the game, he actually leaves before. So that was another choice where it was like, okay, that doesn't really change anything. He leaves first, they leave first. It doesn't really matter because they don't even interact until like what we got in the finale where they meet up at the theater. It's exactly the same in the game. So regardless of him leaving first or second, it doesn't make much of a difference. It's just like a slight difference that it doesn't really matter overall. They both end up leaving. Everybody's gone. So some changes I don't mind. Some changes like that one, I was just like, that feels like it's worth putting the money into, to just have them go back to the hospital, have it be, and it's not even an action sequence. That's the thing that's really odd, is like, they couldn't just have the hospital area, especially considering, and now I'll say this is something I didn't really think about until everything was all said and done. I was like, you already know what you're doing, which makes it even weirder that they didn't think, well, we have the hospital, why don't we just film the finale sequence now? They filmed them like what, a year and a half apart, maybe. Like, that's, one of the giant things when it comes to, Ellie throughout the show is like, well, she still looks exactly the same because she's the same age. They didn't do, multiple seasons, and it's been years. And so she's bigger now. She looks exactly the same as she does from season 1. And I find it super odd that just never occurred to them to be like, hey, what if we just film this sequence? Like, she's by herself when she's in the hospital. She's by herself. There's no enemies. It's completely abandoned. She just walks around and finds information. And I'm like, they didn't think to just film that? That's almost weird to me, Where it's how could you not do that when you already have it there? You know exactly what you're doing because it's literally the first whole game, season 1, seasons 2 and 3, potentially 4, which I hope not, the second game, which has already existed. The game itself is 5 years old now. By the time the last season came out, the game was, I think 3, because it was almost 2 years or a year and a half ago, but it was like 3 years old. And that's the second game. And like, it makes no sense that they couldn't just have that actual sequence that I thought was probably one of the most important sequences of them just being at the hospital. And, you know, the moment she literally finds out, it's not because the face he made when he lied. It's like she heard it, you know, from the horse's mouth, so to speak. In fact, it's actually directly from Abby's father that she heard the recording. So I don't know why they wouldn't have done that. Even if they didn't plan it, they should have spent the money to go back or rebuild the sets or, you know, do the CG, whatever. They should have done that because that is such a huge sequence. And I don't think the change really worked for me, especially because it was just another moment of being like, oh, Joel's kind of an a-hole. And it was like, I don't feel like I needed that. Like, it almost like they added an extra moment of him being a crappy person when I feel like it was good enough just doing the one big decision he made at the end of the first season / game. I was like, that's enough. I didn't want them to add an extra sequence of like, oh, he did this, he did yet another thing wrong. And I was like, he already has like the one giant thing. That's all he needs is that one big thing. And then, you know, that throws in the stuff with the therapist. And of course, the conversation there, Ellie screwed up. They should have kept that lie going because it's like, well, you didn't help her. That's for sure. Like, yeah, you told the truth. I'm the type of person that's like, I prefer to know the truth. But if I know the truth, I don't know. Like, you had the time. You could have figured something out. You're smart enough. Like I said, could have been outside the gate. All the, like, they could have found ways to do that. And I, you know, just the fact that he killed the dude, but also lied on top of it, just all wrong is how it feels to me personally. But lots of changes, lots of things that were kind of reworked, and some stuff was meshed together where it's like, oh, I can kind of, you know, they have the sequence where they're in the subway and I'm like, okay, that's this scene. Or they don't do the scene where she's in the office, but they do go into an office and it's like, oh, this is like the office area where there's a whole set of stuff, which obviously everything's truncated, but it was like, oh, this is like replacing this segment. Sadly, we don't get like the crazy arcade boss battle. There's a scene where Ellie's on the boat, not going directly to the aquarium, but there's like a whole chunk of the game where she rides throughout the city on a boat because it's all flooded. And there's like a boss battle at an arcade. There's a really cool segment of like an office building that's destroyed, but you can also go up because there's a monorail. You can actually go into the monorail. Like, there's one car that's there and you can like snipe from the monorail into the building. It's super cool. It's just like stuff that you don't normally see in games because it's a post-apocalyptic area. Also, it's Seattle, so lots of water. And it was really cool. And it's like, man, some of these set pieces would have been super cool to see. And of course, same thing like from the first game. I feel way more for the second because they did a lot of extra work in the city. But there's some things that they show. There's a specific skyline shot where I'm like, I know that there's like a thing, you can go back to it. But I thought that was cool. And they also changed it to where it was raining, which is not in the game. And I know exactly why they did that. And it's because in the game, there's a specific thing with Abby where she actually has vertigo, and they took that out. And I won't explain any further because I will kind of spoil some stuff, but obviously the game exists, you can look into that. But since they took that out of the show, they changed the weather and it was like, oh, it's raining now. That's how they're going to do that sequence when, you know, season 3 comes out. So I thought that was cool. You know, like I said, there's small bits and pieces where they do stuff and I'm like, okay, I can appreciate that. You know, you change little stuff that's like not that big of a deal. You know, Tommy going first versus Ellie and Dina going first, that, you know, whatever, I don't really care. And then I think that leads to kind of the last thing, and that's the character stuff. And everyone kind of has, I think it's almost unanimous. Ellie is not the Ellie. This Ellie, totally different. That's, if there's any reason to play the game, it's this. This Ellie is a totally different Ellie, 100%. It's not just the fact that they made it where, and I mentioned this in a video because after the second episode I did just like a little podcast video where just talking about it, and I was like, I don't like that Ellie's kind of gung-ho. Her and Dina, I was like, I don't really like that either of them are gung-ho, like when they do the supermarket thing. I'm like, yeah, they go in and attack, but it's more jovial in the show where it's like, you know, they do like the miming thing and it's like kind of silly with the blood spreading out of her neck, like, yeah, I'll stab him. I was like, okay, I'll give you that, but at the same time, she's much jokier and also not as efficient. And a lot of people also said this, Dina doing like the triangulation thing is like, well, Ellie could have easily done it. They make it seem like, she just doesn't have those skills. Like she's just kind of, just a run and gun type. But it's like, no, in the game, she can run and gun because she's just as good as Joel is. Or, at the very least, she's getting there because he trained her. Like she has those genuine talents, and obviously they give her those talents because we have to use them, as people playing the game. So she's doing all sorts of stuff, and obviously you kill like 100 trillion people in the game, totally different from the show. But she has skills. She doesn't have to be like, a super assassin or anything, but she could have triangulated. They say they're here, okay, that's kind of this and this. Like she should just have those skills anyway, because just like Dina, who is the same age as her and probably wasn't trained by Joel and also her uncle Tommy, if anything, Ellie is like way beyond most of the people in that town. Like it honestly, it should be like Joel and Tommy, and under that, because no one else is named, honestly, go straight to Jesse like right after that, and then it would probably be Ellie underneath. Even game wise, I think that would kind of be the case. They don't really specify exactly how old he is and stuff like that in the game, where they do in the show, where it's like, you're only like 4 years older, but they really drive that home as like an addition to his character. Like he's seen as like one of the next leaders of the town. They don't do that like at all in the game. He's just like another person helping out. But same thing happens, is like, yeah, I came to help out. The only difference is that he's solo as well. Like Tommy leaves by himself in the game, and Jesse leaves by himself to go after Ellie and Dina. Like, hey, also another switch. I think he says like, hey, I would have came to help you if you asked. And then in the show, he's like, I voted not to go. And I felt like they could have just done a little explanation. They made him really not like her, which I 100% understood. It was like, I kind of get it, because he was pretty much mad at her the whole time. In the game, I feel like they're a lot closer, even though he has that line in the theater. Like, I feel like you would have, burnt the world down to come after me, which people have pointed out. Bit of an odd line, considering she left her uncle. You're like, we're not even related, dude. I left my uncle because I was ready to murder. And she does. Accidentally in this case, which is not the same as it was in the game. Another change I didn't really like, where they have the sequence where she kills Owen and Mel. And in the game, it's much different. It's similar, but the way that Mel dies is very different. Mel actually goes on the attack, and that's why she gets killed. She could have just attempted to survive, but she was like, hey, I think, they're kind of like, hey, you're probably going to kill us both anyway. She'd already shot Owen. And so, Mel tries to go in and stab her. Ellie hits her with some reversals. She's gone. And then it's like, oh crap, she's pregnant. They don't do the sequence where, she shoots Owen and then it was by mistake. She kind of just nicked her neck. And then it's like, cut the baby out. It was just like a visceral moment where, she kills her. She doesn't even find out after she kills her. She kills her. And then she goes back to Owen, who's starting to bleed out. And then he mentions what happened. And then she goes back and is like, what are you talking about? Because she could barely hear him. And that's when she realizes that. She goes back and like opens her shirt. And then like all the sound drowns out and she's like hyperventilating. And it's like, that's just way better to me. That's like a million times better, because it was just like a chaotic moment that, and it's funny because you don't get the opportunity to know, but I don't think she would have killed either of them in the game or the show. I don't think she would have done it had they actually just told her what to do. Because at that point, because both sequences come after she like just wails on Nora, which is fantastic. It was basically 1-to-1 recreation, also great. And I was excited to hear it, where it was like, I could still hear his screams. It's like, yeah, bitch got what he deserved. And I remember hearing that in the game for the first time and being like, wow, she gotta go. And then they do it in the show and I was like, still hits really hard. I just love that moment in the game, and I love it in the show as well. And them adding the spores back in, really cool way to do that. Also can't wait to see, some stuff that happens. But those are the type of changes where I'm like, I can appreciate that. And then, just minute stuff, bringing spores back in just to still have that. And they kind of had to have that moment be so good. And also changing the fact that Ellie already knew, they do a bit of exposition. This is exactly what he did. And then Ellie's like, I know. And it's like, okay, I like that change as well. I thought that was actually kind of cool to hear her say that, because in the game, you don't know that at that point. But to hear her just coldly be like, I know. It's like, oh, okay. And there's stuff that they say, if you play the game, if you go back, there's definitely some dialogue in there, even between Ellie and Dina, where it's like, what do you think you did? And she doesn't, specify anything, but it's just like, it doesn't matter. And then when you play through the game, you find out like, oh, she knew the whole time that you're going on this rampage. She knew what he did. And, just like in the show, you find out she knew this whole time exactly what he, did. And that's why also finding out that she knew was a much better sequence in the game compared to the show, where it was directly like she went to the location and got that news, versus you look the same when you lied to my face. But I like the fact that they did at least lead up to it with the questions that she would have, naturally over years. But just little stuff like that, like the way that characters die, specifically Mel, and the emotions that they change, where I think it's the fact that it kind of helps you in a sense stick to Ellie a bit more, just like the sympathy of it. I think it helps you stick to her a little bit more compared to the game, where she kills like you're playing the game, so you kill like a buttload more people, and in the show it's like they keep it very simple, like very tiny kill count, and I think it's so that you don't hate her as much. I'm not sure. I never hated her though, I'll say that. A lot of people also hate her. I didn't hate her in the game. I felt like the whole point is that everybody's bad to somebody else, so I was like, I don't hate her. I don't really hate Abby. That's just how I felt the whole way through. So that was why I always enjoyed the game. I was like, I never attached to anybody because I was never that crazy about it. From even the first game, I was like, I'm not losing my mind that Joel is dead. I didn't, even when it happened in the game, I was like, that really sucks, but I'm not like, that's just me. So changes that I like, mostly changes I don't like, if we're being completely honest. Ellie not being as capable, I don't really enjoy as much. Just a lot of the sequences that they cut, some of the just really cool stuff. There's just really cool stuff, way more so than in the first game. And it's just like, that's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate that they cut so much stuff. And somehow they're still going to try to do, saying, potentially 4 seasons. I'm like, you spent 3 straight episodes in Jackson before they even left, and you still covered nearly 12 hours worth of gameplay. So I don't see how they would even need that many episodes. They could do everything they did and cover Abby's stuff, and then do 3 episodes after all of her stuff is done, because the game keeps going. So, and then it goes kind of back and forth again. Like, you can do those in 3 episodes 100% if they can do what they did this season, or they could just do more episodes. I don't know why they wouldn't just give them more. They should have done that for the first season. The first season should have been the first game should have been split into 2 seasons. That's what they should have done. Do the whole first game in 2 seasons and then go into season 2, which probably would have helped with the age thing as well. But those are my thoughts on it. Overall, I don't like it as much because there was more to have cut because the game is longer, and they cut that stuff. And then some of the things they mixed around, I'm like, I don't like as much. I don't like Ellie nearly as much. I think she's actually super cool in this game, incredibly violent. And in the show, she's on this quest, but because they don't actually have her killing as many people, like even the scene when she's like trying to help the kid who's a scar, just like everybody else, I was like, this scene doesn't make any sense. That was something that I think was supposed to be in the game that they cut, and I'm glad they did, because it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, especially, like, I know it's a kid, and I know, the stuff that's happening, but I'm like, specifically during that sequence, I'm not on anyone's side once we're in the forest section, which sadly also wasn't nearly as cool as I'd hoped. She hid in a tree, and then they walked, and then she found out, like, how to get to the hospital or whatever, and then she left. I was like, oh, yet another section in the game. Love that. She's also by herself during that segment, and I was like, oh, this would be really cool. Like, it's them all split up in the forest, and Dina's been shot, and it's like, how are they going to get out, with these people whistling, and they know the park way better. And it was just like, oh, she hid in a tree, which was nice, and then she saw the hospital and took off, and I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be like a cool stealth action sequence, and then it ended already, and I was like, well, that blows. I was like, honestly, kind of one of my favorite parts of the game. And it was like, oh, all right, I guess that's over too. So once again, there's a lot of stuff that feels important, even if it's just gameplay wise, because during that segment in the game, that's the first time you ever encounter them, and it literally comes from an arrow hitting you first. Like, they don't do the whistle, the arrow hits you first, and then it's like, what the F is this? And then that's when you fight the scars. So there's like nothing to them. You don't know anything about them in the game. It's actually very shocking, and it's once again one of the best parts of the game. So, personal opinion, but that change, not having it be a really good action sequence, was unfortunate. The way that some of the characters, specifically the way that they kill Mel, and they have it be more like emotional versus, it's a different emotion. It's more like a sad thing where it's like, oh man, Ellie doesn't know what she's doing. And in the game, it's like she could almost vomit from having done something where she just had no comprehension of it. Like, this woman attacked her, she fought back, killed them both, and was like, dang, I didn't find Abby, and also I killed a pregnant lady. And it gets in her head, obviously, the stuff with Dina. So there's a lot there that I'm just like, I don't feel like it was done nearly as well. In the first season, if I put a number on it, I'd be like, the first season, I'd probably give it like a 7, as far as like, okay, you still got the fillings and the sequences well enough. I'd probably give it like a 7. In this, I'd probably drop it down to like maybe 5, 6, because I just feel like there was so much that was either changed entirely, like personality wise, Ellie is so different. Dina is so different. Dina, I always love Dina in the game. Dina's great in this as well. But Ellie, I don't like as much. The stuff that they change, I think is kind of pointless. The stuff that they take out is definitely pointless. Like there's the scene with Ellie being hung by the people, by the scars on the island is legit one of the most important sequences in the game for Abby. And if they used it as like a cool visual moment where this thing is happening and then it doesn't, they could do it again and just make it look different. But it seemed like they were showing that to be like, yeah, here you go. Here's the reference. And we're not doing that. And if they're not doing that, that is once again a huge, huge difference that I, at this point, legit, like I almost can't comprehend it because I'm like, that moment is so very, very specific. To not have it at all and change how certain characters meet each other, it's like, okay, let's see what happens. So that's what we'll see. I know this is a long one. I apologize for that, but going through the whole season, there's a lot to talk about. I enjoyed the action that we got. Loved episode 2. That was probably my favorite episode. Just for, you know, like the cool action that we got and the whole town being destroyed and, you know, obviously Joel's death and the way they handled that. Thought that was really great. Finale I didn't really enjoy as much. I didn't like hate it or anything like that, but I was definitely just like, man, they're really throwing in the war at the last minute. And I think in the game, when Ellie's going to the aquarium, you see kind of like how they do in the show. I think the giant explosion, I think that's all you get is like just boom, this giant explosion goes off and it's like, what the F is that? Like, what is that? Like, and that's the other half of the game where you're just like, I don't know, but that's interesting because a big effing explosion just went off in the distance. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to kill Abby though. Like that's my story. That's something else I'm gonna see later, but that's interesting. And then I feel like they did it just a little bit too hard, having her wash up on the island, then do a sequence that should have been completely saved. Once again, a moment that should be like 1-to-1, and it's like, here you go, we're changing it later. It's like, well, I hate that because that sequence is excessively important. And once again, they could do it, just make it look different or have it technically be in a different location, but it's like, why? Like for seeing, like I said, there are just some sequences where I personally feel that should be 1-to-1. Joel's death was different enough that I enjoyed it. Even had a different character there. Instead of his brother being there, it was Dina, and that gives her more motivation to go. That makes sense. That works. Everything's fine there. Taking an entire sequence that would belong to Abby and how she literally goes through like a fundamental moment. Like I'm telling you, it's probably like the most important moment of her whole character going throughout the game. And it's like, that should just be 1-to-1. Like they can change it and the essence is there, whatever. But I'm like, that should be 1-to-1. Just like, personally speaking, Ellie going directly to the hospital, that should be 1-to-1. That's my personal opinion. But I'll end it there. I rambled on long enough, kind of crapping on this second season. Of course, I'll watch the third season. I'll probably do it like I did this one. Oh, well, I might wait a little longer. I only watched the first 2 episodes specifically because I just wanted to be on the internet when everyone talked about Joel dying. Other than that, I was like, I'll just wait. And then I watched it in like 3 episode chunks until it was done. I'm not entirely certain how I'm even bother watching season 3. I might actually just wait until the whole thing is done and just shoot through it. Like there's maybe like one portion I actually want to experience like myself without waiting, just because it's a good portion of the game. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with season 3. I hope they just do 3 seasons, but I feel like they're gonna shoot it to 4. So I don't know if that's better or worse. Honestly, that's the crazy thing about it. It's like I don't know if I can honestly believe that would be better, because then it's like, well, where do we get back to the theater? How does that work? So I don't know. We'll see what happens with season 3, but those are my thoughts on it. We'll love to know yours. Things you like, things you didn't like, the changes. I can't really say additions. Technically, it's a substitute. It's not really an addition. Well, no, the flashbacks, I guess, would count as an addition, going back to Joel stuff. The little segment of him as a kid, and obviously the stuff with Eugene is like technically an addition or substitute, depending on how you want to look at it. I guess technically it would be a substitute because that replaces them going to the hospital. So once again, it's not really new. But the flashback of him as a kid, new. Overall, the flashback episode was pretty nice. It was definitely fun. We'll see what happens as far as just how the characters interact and what people feel about the acting in the 3rd season. I'm very curious about. I didn't mind the acting. I didn't have an issue with it. Obviously, if there's anything good with the season being over, at the very least, Bella Ramsey does not have to see those memes as much. The King and Queens one is God tier. That is the funniest one. That's the best one. Like none of the other ones are better than that. But it's so mean. People are like insanely mean. Like they just pause it on her face during just certain sequences. I'm like, I'm sorry. Can she not scream while running away from a monster trying to kill her in the subway system? I'm just saying, like, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. But we'll love to know your thoughts, all things The Last of Us, game, show, all that good stuff. What you guys expect for season 3? If we get 4 seasons, whatever they're gonna do. I would love to know your thoughts on all of that. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.